Hello YouTube, Ronan Kazi. Screwed up the video and screwed up the beginning. As promised, spacers be damned. More Starfield. I'm not going to give you nonstop Starfield. This is probably the last one for a little bit till I move on to different areas. I've kind of followed the linearity. I've followed the initial quest to a certain point, but I don't want to do the whole quest. I might want to do that, but I don't want to show you the whole quest. I don't think that's what the beauty of this game is. The beauty of this game is the exploration part. This first part, what you're seeing is I sped it up 5 times. So I'm trying to sneak up to that that space communication satellite, and I'm going to steal some information. And so I sped it up 5 times because I went really slow. They wanted me to shut down all my power so I couldn't be sensed. So I'm kind of going stealth, and I'm going 7, whatever the units are, towards this. Once I got everything lined up, I just could, glance at every once in a while, and I did something else. Do you like science fiction? I have to say, I've always had an affinity to science fiction. When I was a kid, I really was a big comic book aficionado. So I grew up, let's say, from the time I was, from 1970 to like 1980, I collected comics in earnest. And when I say collected comics, I took advantage of my parents that were divorced to make my dad feel guilty and buy me a lot of comics. When we'd go out to his house on the weekend, we'd always stop at a place called Perry Drugs. They had one of those racks, and I would just take off my favorites. And comics back then were like 20 cents, right? So for $1, I'd get 5. Eventually I got to 25. I think I stopped collecting when they were at 35 cents. I was like, oh gosh, only get 3 for $1, YouTube? So I've gone to the space station. The clues from that communication satellite led me to here. So I always liked comics. A lot of the comics, which you're seeing in the Marvel Universe, almost all of that I have seen up into this multiverse thing is now kind of new. And we really didn't have, we had the Fantastic Four would go into the micro world, and Ant-Man wasn't that popular, but Fantastic Four would go in that subworld, and I would just kind of whatever that. And probably the comic book guys were probably telling me about quantum stuff, but I wasn't smart enough to get at YouTube back then. Then I graduated. My dad was into science fiction, so he's a big Star Trek guy, so we'd watch that ad nauseum till I hated Star Trek, and then when I got older, I appreciated it. And of course, then I fell in love with all the other kind of sci-fi kind of stuff. And so I read some of those books. Isaac Asimov was like kind of the first kind of person I delved into, like the iRobot series, then Foundation series, and then a lot of his short stories. Those were good. And then in the military, a lot of times when you're on a ship, you'd be away from port, you didn't have internet, it didn't even exist, and you really couldn't get TV, so you're either watching movies or you're reading. So at first I read a lot of war books, Tom Clancy novels, those kind of things. Then eventually, I forget when it was, but William Gibson came out with Neuromancer or Necromancer, whatever it was, and Burning Chrome was a bunch of short stories, and that cyberpunk really took off for me, and I was really enamored with that. And of course you got like Blade Runners in that genre kind of thing, and those things are just fantastic for me. So why didn't I keep reading all that stuff? Because video games replace that. The writing in some video games are fantastic. You either have like fantasy, which is World of Warcraft, and maybe Elder Scrolls Online or Elder Scrolls. But then you do have some sci-fi like Destiny, Destiny 2, Fallout 3, Fallout 4. We have post-nuclear, post-apocalyptic, those kind of things, and a smattering of everything in between. So when Starfield came out, I knew I was going to have a natural affinity to it. There's a game back in the day that I played. It was called Star Command. I don't know if I'll show you a picture of it. It was 1988. You can look for the game around then. It was, I guess now. And I played a game UFO game where you're underwater. It was like UFO 2, I forget the name. I'll think of it soon. But it's one of those isometric games. This wasn't even isometric. It was a lot of text-based stuff. You'd have 6 people in your thing, and they'd gain ranks and all that stuff. You give them different weapons, but it wasn't. There was no graphics because it was DOS, so everything was text-based. There were some graphics, but it was like not live graphics like you see now. So, and of course, like probably a game that I always loved was a game called Bard's Tale. Bard's Tale, Wasteland, any of the Fallout, and Star Command, and then it just grew from there. But at the end of the day, when you're in the building, you're clearing the building, so it ceases to be a sci-fi shooter. It is now a regular shooter that you're doing, like if you were doing in the Division or anything else. And so some of those itches get scratched as well. And I like the combat. You pick up weapons. There's a lot of looting. You're looting this stuff maybe to sell it. If you like doing trading, you're looting everything in here and then you're selling it all. If you like exploring, you're exploring on 3 levels. You're exploring buildings, you're exploring planets. If you like resource gathering, you're doing a ton of that, and then you're selling it, and you're trading, you're crafting. So these games are kind of like a big sandbox. And I'd say a game like this game is probably like the biggest sandbox because it's dealing more of a universal kind of thing in different planets, what have you. And if you think back to Minecraft, that was a procedurally generated game. And if you think about, sometimes they say, do we live in a simulation? They say, it's not enough computing power to live in a, there's not enough computing power to take into account every single atom, blah, blah, blah. But what if everything's procedurally generated? If the visible universe is 13.8 billion years, but do we have to generate all 13.8 billion years? No, you just got to generate light streams, which are easy, right? Those are single photons that are reaching us. So I think some of that's easy. So that doesn't rule that out. Furthermore, we don't even know how big the visible universe is 13.8, but we can't see what we can't see. And as we get better scientific instruments, we can see further. So I would caveat everyone, and I've said this on a bunch of these videos, especially dealing with science, we don't know what we don't know. Conversely, we probably know some things and we wish they weren't. All that being said, would you like a game like this? Yes. If you like a role-playing game, if you like where you level up, you would like this game. Is it leveling as fast as Remnant? No. Is it leveling as fast as something like New World? No. But the thing about New World is it's set, even if it's not the 1700s, it feels like the 1700s. And a game like ESO Online, it's not set in the 1700s, but it's set in alternative reality where you have cat people, lizard people, every type of hobbits and all those other people. Small, big, whatever. Orcs, trolls. World of Warcraft, same way. That's why probably some people like the Division. It's as far as you can go without breaking the reality, like this is somehow real. And when you think about that story, it's a great story. Maybe it's too real. But talking about too real, this is when I'd like you to subscribe, share, unsubscribe, resubscribe, comment when it works, hit the notifications. Back to the game. So I'm clearing this star dock that I went to. This is back like on, I think, Venus or the moon. It's near the moon or something. I haven't gone back to planet Earth. Obviously, I'm going to go back and see planet Earth. Obviously, that's a thing in every sci-fi thing that we have to go back. We're on Earth, right? And I wanted to like that Will Smith movie. Just sometimes when you cast your family members in films, you can't help but, I guess it was his son, so it makes sense, but YouTube. Anyways. So what's happening as I'm picking up all this stuff, I'm starting to get winded. Because the other thing in this, it's closer to a literal kind of thing. I get overburdened, and then it affects my oxygen, and there's a CO2 component. As CO2 builds up, that's also a negative thing. And you'll see sometimes when my screen goes fuzzy, that's because I have too much CO2. And I can upgrade my character to handle this better. So it's very thorough in that kind of respect. So this is where I run into a problem. Gonna play Division 2, gonna play Diablo 4, gonna play Remnant, gonna play Ghost Recon. I've been playing New World. Does this replace New World? Gonna play SWOTR. So I gotta drop one of these things. And really what's gonna determine that is you. Really whoever's watching it. And I got Baldur's Gate, right? So I'm looking at all these things and I'm gonna probably drop the one that doesn't make people do the most. Now, that's not even English, sorry YouTube. I'm gonna drop the game that doesn't have the most views, like whichever has the least views is gonna, I'll do some analysis why. Partly Baldur's Gate, I haven't gone very far, but Baldur's Gate has an end to it also, as far as the story. Remnant, I'm getting different armors, which give me different play styles. Diablo 4, I can ramp up the hardness where it's great. Fallout 76 is another game that I like to play. So a lot of these games have a difficulty that I can ramp up that we can talk about. What's the purpose of the channel? I have to think about that also. I want to talk to you about different subjects. So sci-fi, we're talking about that today, and sci-fi bleeds into science. Some of the things that I talked about in the last video is, you know, it should automatically put my spacesuit on for me, because like I wouldn't walk out without my spacesuit on. I don't need the game to be that realistic where I gotta, oh crap, YouTube. You know, I don't want to do that. And also I think one of the other things in this type of game, I think when you go in your inventory, it pauses time, which is kind of good. In Fallout series, they have a thing called VATS, Variable Accuracy Targeting System, where it would, once you'd hit the VAT system, it would let you target legs or arms or whatever to, you know, disable someone or whatever. That was kind of a neat feature. But it lets you heal yourself. You should never really die, because it's just taking a med pack and doing it and letting it go. The skill tree is really big. I don't know how I'm going to get all those things. So it has a lot of room for a lot of levels. So is it a game I should play? If you like those kind of games, if you like Fallout, if you like Skyrim, if you like sci-fi, this is going to be a game. If you like sci-fi. The other thing, right, so Star Wars Old Republic has flying, but it's flying on rails. I can fly to different places. I see the graphic for that. I can do different missions, but it's missions on a rail. So I'm going to go around and shoot, and it's, you know, it's okay. This, I've already smoked some people, and it's going to have some flight simulator characteristics. That was one of the first games I played online with a lot of people that I was really dedicated to, and I love that game. It was Combat Flight Simulator 2. And it had a lot of mods. We'd land on aircraft carriers and whatever. So some of the things about this series of games, you can mod it. So I think it's a good game. It's a popular game, but ultimately I got to play games I like. And number two, the focus kind of this channel is to talk about things, not necessarily show you games. So the games are kind of a vehicle for me to talk to you. If you like looking at something, when I'm listening to someone, I don't want to see just someone's face talking and then cut to the other person. Hey, this is what I think. I want to give you something a little extra to look at. Some of you listen to this just in the car. That's what it's for. It's just for you to listen to it. There might be some things you might go back and say, I want to see what you were talking about. But if I'm doing this right, oh no, YouTube, my second screen, YouTube, come on back. Ta-da, there's my light. Lights on cheap. So, part of this is a podcast. Eventually, I'll probably talk about some topics du jour, right? I'm not a big reaction video person. I don't think that's giving you any content. I'd rather give you that content outside of all that. I think chasing that kind of content's tough, right? Because you always have this thing to outdo yourself. I did 700-800 views on this video. Now I got to do this. Or you get locked into chasing, you know, I got to do builds. Now I'm going to mix this with this with this. And that's interesting, but I'd be more, so in real life, when I'm doing that, I'm doing correlation studies, or I'm trying to sell something to someone, I got to show them kind of proof. And a lot of these videos, I'm not happy with them because they're just really basically disguised as someone's opinion, but it's really just an offer sheet. So again, if I took the computer I bought and read you the stats, that's what a lot of people, and I had nice views of it, and I had portrait views of the laptop and me typing on the laptop, and then I had, you know, B-roll of the laptop, and then just said, here's what was on the laptop. Conversely, if I only had reams and reams and reams of benchmarks, that's no good either, because a lot of those benchmarks don't pertain to you. One thing I can tell you, let's go back to sci-fi. Sci-fi is good, YouTube. I don't know what's good, but that's kind of where we're at. If you really like Starfield, please let me know. I am deciding what to do with it, but I'm not going to show you a lot. It's going to give it a break. This is Ronan Kazi signing off. Thanks, YouTube. Appreciate it. Bye.